Hi everybody, Dr. Joe again. Thank you for participating in the second video. You learned about where your attention goes, your energy flows. And I asked you to begin to become conscious of where you place most of your attention, because where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And if you keep your attention on the same people and conditions in your life, then you're viewing your life from the same level of mind and nothing should change. Now, let's go quantum for a minute. In quantum physics experiments, you have the nucleus of an atom, and then you have this big field of energy that exists around it. And when they first started to look for the electron, when they started looking for the electron to measure and observe it, the moment they began to observe and look for that electron, all that energy went from a field of possibilities, a wave, and collapsed into matter called a particle, called collapsing the wave function, a quantum event. The moment they took their attention off that electron and no longer observed it, took their mind off it, it turned back into energy, turned back into possibility. Now, what does that have to do with you? Well, if you keep viewing your life from the same level of mind, you're collapsing infinite fields of energy into the same patterns called your life. So the moment you begin to redirect your attention and redirect your energy, and you take your attention off the problems in your life, from a quantum perspective, your life should turn back into possibility. So I wanted to address that because I love the questions and comments that we got after the first video. It means you're paying attention. It means that you're engaged. So keep them coming and we'll keep answering them. Now, the biggest reason people stop being creators in their life is because they're living in survival. And living in survival is living in stress. And stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of homeostasis. Stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of balance. The stress response is what your body innately does to return itself back to order. So whether there's a threat in your outer environment that's causing you to begin to draw from this invisible field of electromagnetic energy surrounding your body and turning it into chemistry, the moment you begin to react to something or someone in your outer environment emotionally, and you begin to tap from this field and turn it into chemistry, you're mobilizing enormous amounts of energy for some threat in your external environment. In fact, that primitive nervous system says it's all or nothing. If you're being chased by a predator, you don't put out 50% of your energy, you use 100% of your energy because it means your life. So then living in survival and living in stress, you're constantly tapping your body's resources in your vital field and turning it into chemistry. And that's normal for the short term. I mean, it's natural. If you're being chased by a predator, it's your job to outrun it. It's your job to stay and fight. It's your job to hide. And that's what we do when that primitive nervous system is activated. Now, when the body gets a rush of adrenaline, when it gets a rush of energy and the brain becomes aroused and the body becomes aroused, the problem is that people start to become addicted to that rush of adrenaline, that rush of energy. And they use the problems and conditions in their life to reaffirm their addiction to that emotion. They need the bad job, they need the poor relationship, they need the difficult situation in their life because it makes them feel something. God forbid they don't feel anything. So then reason this with me. If the hormones of stress are highly addictive, and people are using the conditions in their life to reaffirm their addiction to some emotion, then it's entirely possible that they become addicted to the life that they don't even like. So then in the short term, all organisms in nature can tolerate short-term stress. Zebra gets chased by the lion, the zebra outruns the lion, half an hour later it goes back into homeostasis, it goes back into balance, and it starts eating again. That's normal. But when we start having the stress response one after the other, and it's no longer a predator that's chasing us, but it's now a coworker or it's a financial situation, and the stress response is consistently switched on, and the person is living in that high arousal state, no organism can live in emergency mode for an extended period of time. And when we turn on the stress response and we can't turn it off, now we're headed for disease. The problem gets a little bit worse because of the size of our neocortex, our thinking brain. We can think about our problems. We can think about the conditions in our life. We can anticipate some future worst-case scenario or begin to think about some past bitter memory. And we can turn on that stress response just by thought alone. So then, if you can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, and the hormones of stress are very addictive, people can become addicted to their own thoughts. And this is why change is so hard. Now, it's a scientific fact that the hormones of stress push the genetic buttons that create disease. So then, if you can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, and the hormones of stress can make you sick, then your thoughts can literally make you sick. And so many people then, when they begin to mismanage their attention and mismanage their energy, it's because the brain is so aroused because of the hormones of stress that they're trying to control and predict everything in their life. So think about this. If you consistently draw from this invisible field of energy and consistently turn it into chemistry, you're going to begin to tap the body's vital resources. And if you do that over time, you're going to feel more like matter and less like energy, more like particle and less like wave. In fact, when this happens, the very hormones of stress cause us to become materialists, to define reality with our senses, because the very nature of those chemicals heighten our senses. So if there's a predator lurking around the corner and all of a sudden that adrenal response kicks in, the common thing to do is to narrow your focus on that object, on that predator. Narrow your focus on that piece of material in your material world. And as you narrow your focus in quantum physics, you're focusing on the particle. And so then you eliminate possibility. So if people spend the majority of their life living in emergency mode and they're narrowing their focus on matter, on particle, they're no longer thinking about possibility. In fact, it's not a time to think about possibility. It's not a time to create. It's not a time to sit still and go within. It's not a time to learn. It's a time to run, fight, and hide. So if you feel more like matter and less like energy, and you're trying to create a new life for yourself, then you feel like a body trying to change something in your life, then you are matter trying to change matter. And you can set those goals and you can reach those goals, but the side effect of it is it's going to take an enormous amount of time. Because when you're living by the hormones of stress and you're focusing on matter, we begin to experience a separation. There's you there and there's me here. There's me here and there's my dreams way over there. I feel separate from them. So when people begin to create the life that they want and they're matter trying to change matter, they're going to have to drag their body through space to get what they want, and it's going to take time. So when I move from this point of consciousness to another point of consciousness, from here to the wall, or from here to my car, it's going to take me a certain amount of time to get there because I have to go from one point of consciousness to another point of consciousness, and it's going to take time. So when you have dreams that you want to accomplish and you're matter trying to change matter, you may reach those dreams, but it may take you 30 years or 20 years to get them because you're going to have to drag your body through space to work back and forth to pay for the house or the car that you want. And of course, you can get it, but it's going to take a certain amount of time. In the work that we do, we teach people how to begin to change that. We ask them to take their attention off their body. And if they take their attention off their body, they go from a somebody to a nobody. We ask them to take their attention off the people in their life. They'll go from a someone to a no one because they're no longer identifying with those people. If we ask them to take their attention off their objects and things they own, their cell phone, their computer, their car, and if they do that properly, they're going to go from something to nothing. If they take their attention off the place they need to go and at a certain time, it's highly possible that they're going to go from somewhere to nowhere, from some time to no time. And it's that act of falling into the present moment that allows them to begin to connect to that field of information called the unified field. If they do it properly, and they take their attention off of matter, off converging their focus on something material, and they begin to sense the vastness of this unified field, that field of information that exists beyond space and time. As they begin to sense that space and they begin to open their focus, a divergent focus begins to cause the brain and the heart to function more coherently. When the brain starts functioning more coherently and the heart starts functioning more coherently, we begin to feel more whole. And the act of connecting to that unified field, the unified field is a field of information that governs all the laws of nature. It unifies all the principles of three-dimensional reality. So then when you begin to connect to it, not as your body, you got to get beyond your body, not by your identity or the things you own or the places you go or time itself, but with an awareness. When you begin to connect to that unified field and then begin to experience more oneness, more wholeness, and it's reflected neurologically, biologically, chemically, and even genetically. The moment you start to connect to it, you feel like you already have everything that you want. You begin to feel more whole. And we've seen this in our scans, on the brain scans and heart scans that we've been measuring over the last 5 years. All of a sudden, the right side of the brain starts talking to the left side of the brain. The front of the brain starts talking to the back of the brain. The two hemispheres begin to synchronize. And the union of those two hemispheres, the union of polarity, the union of duality, the union of opposites, is called wholeness or love. And the moment that happens, the heart begins to function in a more coherent way. And all of a sudden it begins to produce a very significant magnetic field. And all of a sudden we feel connected to something greater. And when we begin to feel connected to something greater, we're no longer functioning as matter trying to change matter. Because when we're living as matter trying to change matter, we always try to force outcomes in our life. We try to predict outcomes in our life. We try to control outcomes in our life. But when we begin to connect to this field, we begin to trust outcomes. We begin to trust in the unknown. When that happens all of a sudden, and we feel connected to something greater, and we're creating from a field of information beyond space and time, we no longer have to go anywhere to get it. In fact, when we observe from this level, from the quantum field, when we observe from a level of information and energy that exists beyond space and time, we no longer have to drag our bodies through space to get it. Now, we are the vortex in our creation, and now we begin to collapse time, and space or the event begins to come to us. Now we are the vortex to our future. And so then, in order for us to create properly then, we have to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want for something greater to occur. And this process is a skill. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. And so when we're living from this place and we're connecting to the field and we're beginning to create from a realm beyond space and time, the key is that we could never predict how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen, because that's the unknown. And by the way, it's none of our business to try to do that. The moment we try to predict when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen, we just return back to the old self. The new self would never do that. An example, we had a physician, a doctor from London, who finally decided to surrender to the unified field and to give it everything she had, and to give up some aspect of her limited self to join the greater self, to lose herself in nothing, to become everything. And she was persistent enough to get beyond her analytical mind. We happened to be measuring her brain while she did it. And the neuroscientists that were studying her brain for sure thought she was having a seizure, because the amount of energy in her brain was so incredibly high. Now, she wasn't having a seizure. Her brain went into a very fast brainwave pattern. Her whole brain was processing more energy than we typically see. And she was connected to the unified field, and she got a very profound download of information. And her exact words is that she had never felt love like that in her entire life. So what's the significance? Because the unified field is intelligent love. It's loving intelligence. And that energy is carrying a very strong signal or message. And she got a biological upgrade. Biological upgrade that she got was that from the time she was 3 months old, she had eczema over her entire body. And as a physician, she did all the right things. She took the cortisone cream, she took the antihistamines, she watched her diet, she didn't eat sugar, she made sure she was resting, and all of that kept the condition at bay. In other words, matter trying to change matter. But the moment she connected to this field of information, and within 1 day, they sent me the pictures of her arms and hands, and all of her eczema was gone. She got a biological upgrade because she connected to the field. That information, that field of energy, begins to create changes in our biology. So I invite you in the next couple days to try it out. Where you place your attention is where you place your energy. As you open your focus and tune into that information, the moment you begin to tune into that information and that energy, you begin to pay attention to it, you begin to become more aware of it. And if where you place your attention is where you place your energy, you begin to create a field of energy around your body where you feel connected to something greater. And so I ask you to practice over the next few days and see what happens.